Good evening. So my name is Stephanie. I'm new governance officer, and I'm a new starter.
Anybody else? And any declarations of interest? There's all right, is there anyone?
Excuse me, Councillor, the minutes from last meeting didn't get circulated in time for the meeting. They'll be moved to the next meeting instead. Can you also make sure that you use a microphone when speaking, just so it's picked up on the recording, please?
I'm doing what I'm asking everybody else not to do. I apologise. So we come to the presentation from Trafford College then. So is that okay? So over to you.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm a student at Trafford College studying my GCSEs.
Hello, my name is Anne Fernandez. I am a student at Trafford College, Altrincham. I'm currently in the Equalities Council and Green College Assembly, which is a campaign that manages the climate emergency in the college and in the community. I'm in the Equalities Council because I'm passionate about student voice and being a leader to my friends and my classmates.
Hello, my name is Liberty. I'm also a student at Trafford College and I'm currently studying my A-levels. I'm doing Geography, Sociology and Politics. And I want to just say thank you in advance for letting me speak to the council tonight. And I'm also part of the GCA and the Equalities Council, and I'm also especially passionate about climate change. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As I said, I'm Laura, currently a student at Trafford Council. I'm also part of the Equalities Council and Green College Assembly and part of the female basketball team at my school. Well, I'll be talking about the benefits of having a good and healthy lifestyle. There have been evidence that being physically active helps one to be healthier and happier in life. This involves the movement that makes your muscles work and require calories to burn. Even if it's 2 times or 3 times a week, going for a walk or run, participating in sport activities like swimming or volleyball could help keep one fit if they don't want to go through the stress of lifting weights at the gym. Having a good and healthy lifestyle increases the psychological well-being of a person. It helps reduce symptoms of depression, stress, and anxiety. It helps build one's self-esteem and increases the overall function of our brain. Mental health is very essential. It's a critical component of our health. According to the World Health Organization, mental health is a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her potential, can cope with normal stresses of life, and work productive and fruitfully, and is able to contribute to his or her community. But what exactly does a healthy lifestyle entail? Having a healthy lifestyle work involves no smoking, having limits on alcohol consumption, and having a good and balanced diet. These behaviors improve both mental and physical health. I'm going to be talking about the benefits of exercising to physical health. One, it makes one happy. Exercising regularly can increase the production of endorphins, which are known to produce positive feelings and reduce pain in our body. Two, it can reduce the risk of chronic disease. Not being physically active is a primary cause of chronic disease like that of type 2 diabetes, heart diseases, and cancer. Exercising helps build one body's composition and improve insulin sensitivity. Three, it helps improve skin health. Do you know that oxidative stress occurs when the body's antioxidant defense cannot completely repair the cell damage caused by compound known as free radicals? This can damage the structure of the cells and negatively impact one's skin. It can induce skin cells adaptations that can help delay the appearance of skin aging. 4. It can help your brain health and memory. Exercising can improve brain function and protect memory and thinking skills. For older people, regular physical activity helps promote change of the brain structure and function from that of conditions like Alzheimer's disease and dementia. At Trafford, there's a leisure center where one could go be physically active. Even if it's going there with a group of friends or family, there are facilities available to help improve our lifestyle and make it a healthy one. I believe that reducing the cost of membership at the Trafford Leisure Center, especially for those under 20, that there should be student discount, which would be more convenient for younger people to come in regularly and be physical active. Thank you. Please, does anyone have any question?
Sorry, are you okay? I didn't realise that there wasn't a student discount for in the leisure centres. So you have to pay the same as all other adults then?
Yeah, we have to.
Ah, okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anyone else?
I haven't got a question, but I just wanted to reflect really because I thought that was really, really informative. It was very interesting, and I feel like I've learned quite a lot from that. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, actually, for bringing that to us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Thank you. You're welcome.
Hello, as I Hello, as I said before, my name is Anne Fernandez, and today I'll be talking about the cost of transportation in Manchester, specifically in a student's perspective. I believe that it is especially important we address the cost of transportation, as it is a main form of commute for most students. Yes, although it is just a transport service, a lot of students do rely on it. I believe that most students use the bus or tram services and have had their fair share of issues. Although we can't expect a perfect experience all the time, there's always room for improvement. A few things I would like to address is the cost and the convenience of transportation. Personally, from where I live, it's been extremely hard for me to catch the bus, as I live down in South Manchester, East Didsbury, and there are no direct routes to college. So to get to college and home every day, I must take the bus to town and then come back down to college, which is very time consuming. And the bus does not come frequently and is never on time. So it's been easier for me to take the tram and travel, but it's awfully expensive. My parents spend around £50 a month just for me to get to college, and I go to college 5 days a week, so it's a burden that I do not want to put onto my parents. Most of the people I know have also struggled with this problem, where they end up going to town first and then going home or to college. The lack of certain direct bus routes increases our travel time, making it harder for us to get to college and back. Most of my friends that live up in North Manchester spend about £20 a week, which is a lot of money, especially when you go every single day. Now, we could honestly just leave earlier or take different forms of transportation like a taxi or a car, but it's not convenient because not everyone is available to send their children to school and drop them, as parents do have work, and taxis are also quite expensive. It's also said that some places do not have a separate bus route, so they end up getting stuck in traffic, especially when there's an accident. So students end up spending more time on transport than we should. This causes students to miss valuable class time that we could use to be studying. And I do understand that with the pandemic, it is impossible to add more bus routes, but it will surely help, especially with students filling the buses, only for them to end up waiting for the next one, which will cause them to increase their commute time. Now, most students could most definitely use the R-Pass for the bus, but not for the trams. The trams, in my opinion, have been the most useful and the most convenient form of transportation, but it's also quite expensive, as the cost can add up at the end of every month. I believe that the R-Pass should also include tram tickets by making them free for students till they're 18 without making the cost a barrier, as getting our education is a right, not a privilege. This could bring relief to households that could have multiple siblings that need to pay for tram tickets or bus tickets, or parents that have insecure employment. This could also lead to students paying for their ticket instead of jumping the trams, where they end up with a fine causing them to use more inconvenient modes of transportation. For those using the bus, I believe that we should extend or add new bus routes, as well as increase the number of buses that are going out, making them a bit more frequent. Doing this could truly help a lot of students. I believe that breaking the barrier of transport struggles for students could motivate them to get to college by providing them all the means possible to encourage them to get the education and secure a brighter future for themselves. Thank you so much for listening. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Hello, thank you so much for bringing that to us. My name's Adele. I live in Partington and I rely heavily on the bus service. And I don't know whether you know Partington at all, but we're extremely isolated. We're on the very edge of Trafford and we have literally one bus every hour that takes us from Partington into Manchester.
Yes.
And if that bus breaks down, if something happens to that bus, we literally stood there for 2 hours. You know,
Yes.
and I completely empathise with everything you say. I think it's absolutely brilliant. My daughter goes to college in Manchester and she uses R-Pass. Again, because we don't have any tram, we have the bus.
Yes.
So that is just brilliant, you know, for her to be able to get around with that. But as you rightly state, there are young people from other parts of Greater Manchester who have no support at all. And I just think it's brilliant that you're bringing that up. But also, I just really urge you to get behind Andy Burnham's campaign.
Yes.
You heard about the reintegration, integrating the bus services,
Yes,
bringing
I
it
have.
back under public control.
Yes, I have. I think I heard about it today. They've made it £2 for adults now. Yes.
Exactly. That is going to be massive. That's just the start, you know, with all of this sort of additional transport and linking it up with the tram and everything. I think it's really important for people like you, like me, who rely on the bus service. For me, it's transport poverty. You know, we
Yeah.
should be able to do what other people take for granted. If your bus doesn't turn up, there should be some other way of you getting to work or college without being continually late, soaking wet, exhausted by the time you get somewhere. Not ready to learn then, are you? You're cold.
Yeah.
And you know, it just demoralizes your whole day. Or when you finish, you've then got to go and wait around for an hour, especially in winter, freezing, you know, and then you've got homework and if you want to eat. So I just really want to thank you for that. And just to say, please keep banging the drum, because voices like yours, we need all the support we can get. People listen to young people. And
Thank
I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you for listening.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions?
Catherine,
Hello,
do you
yes.
have a question?
Yeah, I think Councillor New has probably articulated really well what I would have said, actually, that I really think you've tapped into something that is very, very topical at the moment, and quite rightly so. It is such an important issue. And I think you talked about how how actually that, you know, lots of young people don't have any alternatives but to catch the bus. But actually we want people, lots and lots more people, to be using public transport rather than going in cars and individual vehicles, in taxis, and making that service an accessible one, an affordable one, a reliable service that connects all the different parts of the area is really, really important. So like Councillor New, I'd really like to thank you for bringing that
Thank you
this
so
evening.
much.
Can I just add my thanks to that? I, like yourself, I'm a public transport user. My attempt to be a little bit greener, but I totally understand the tram scenario. I live just around the corner from your college, actually, just near Timpley Station.
Yeah.
And I work at Wythenshawe Hospital, which is 3 miles away. But I would have to go into Manchester and get a tram out to Wythenshawe, which is very, very expensive.
It really is.
So I end up getting a tram into Altrincham and a bus out. But, you know, it costs a lot of money. Like yourself, I spend hours standing at bus stops, but thank you so much for raising it. It's such an important topic. We all need to try and create a greener environment. And in order to do that, we need to have an excellent public transport system. So it's an excellent point, and please do, as Councillor New said, please keep banging the drum.
I will.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Hello, I just wanted to reiterate my name. It's Liberty, and I would just also want to say thank you again for the opportunity to speak in front of you tonight about something that I and many others feel massively passionate about. Climate change is something that is a massive area of concern that we are not concerned enough about. We need to mitigate the inevitable effects that this is going to have on us on a local, national, and international scale. We are on the verge of being plunged into an irreversible cycle of positive feedback that is going to take an astronomically long time to come back from, possibly not even in our lifetimes. I'm here to aim to create a more sustainable future for both my college and hopefully on a community level too. I want to carry on raising the issue of climate change and the detrimental impacts it will have on humanity as a whole. In the simplest of terms, we are in a climate emergency. 2 words that make a whole difference. Trafford currently has a plan to go carbon neutral by 2038. This is progress in the right direction. However, we do need to be more ambitious. The government's current plan of carbon neutrality by 2050 is not going to prevent the Earth's temperature changing by 1.5 degrees centigrade. It is not enough to sit and listen to the facts from the scientific perspective and completely ignore it. It is not enough to keep on relying on gas and crude oil mined unethically from overseas. It is not enough to sit and do nothing about it until it's too late. We have to act now. It may seem like it is not a crisis or a point of importance to some, as it seems for the government. However, as it stands, the way that we change and consume things or use electricity or buy clothing, but it all has an impact, little by little. Little means a lot here, and not enough is being done to save our future. Since records began, we are seeing the highest temperatures and carbon levels since records began. It can be argued that this is caused by natural reasons such as volcanic eruptions, orbital changes, and oceanic currents. However, this is minuscule in comparison to the problem we have caused ourselves. However, to change our ways, we have to know what climate change is. Climate change, by definition, is the long-term shifts in weather patterns and temperatures on Earth. Earth has a natural pattern of ice ages and an interglacial period. However, it is evident that we are not leaving the interglacial period anytime soon. Earth is doing the opposite. It's getting warmer. The last 20 to 30 years have been some of the hottest on record, and we are still set to rise without human intervention to stop it. This is where we come in. Currently, the average person has a yearly carbon footprint of about 10 tonnes, much higher than the world average, and this has fallen very little since 1990. However, there is small-scale and large-scale opportunities we can do and take to ensure that we stay below the world target of 1.5 degrees centigrade. You could, on a small scale, use less water, use energy-efficient LED or halogen light bulbs, cycle, walk, or take public transport more often, try to avoid fast fashion wherever possible, and shop at places with a good, transparent, and ethical sustainability strategy. There are also things that we can do to help start a step in the right direction for Trafford as a borough too. Encouragement and promotion of the Cycle to Work scheme, more money in providing works and tram lines and buses to ensure energy efficient, affordable travel, standards of social housing and private new builds to use energy efficient practices when building, and installation of solar energy on all new builds, greater promotion of green spaces and introduction of recreational green space in the local community, greater recycling of local waste, and an introduction of an engines off policy to bus stations in order to mitigate unnecessary air pollution. By implementing changes like this to the way we live, it paves the way for a wider change on a national level, for a greener and more sustainable future. It is only by listening to the science and taking accountability for our own actions as a collective that we will achieve the global targets and a greener planet. Together, we can build a future of community, stability, and sustainability for the future of ourselves and the future of our young people. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Liberty. That was really, really interesting, and it was making me feel, ooh, she's right. I've started doing my own thing. I've changed the shower head on my shower so it uses less water. I have a timer at the side of my shower that times me no more than 4 minutes. I've actually started turning my shower off after I've wet my hair. So I do my hair, then I turn the shower back on again. So I'm getting into those routines. I've bought a shopping trolley. Instead of going to the shops in my car, I've now got a shopping trolley that I'm using. So I'm trying my best because I know this is so important. I've not got as long as you left on this world, in this life sort of thing. But I've got grandchildren and I worry about my grandchildren. So it's really, really important. But thank you for that.
No problem.
Wow, Councillor Maitland, I'm really impressed. Really impressed. The shower thing in particular. That is very impressive. I think I just wanted to say, listening to you speak, I think as an adult, I think it really gets to you here a little bit actually, and I think I feel really challenged by what you've said. It's a wake-up call, isn't it? And we can all do something, and we all need to do more. And I think you are absolutely right. You know, we need to stop just talking about it and start doing more. So again, thank you so much. And thank you to all three of you, because I think you've brought some of the most important, if not the most important issues to us tonight. So thank you very much for that.
Can I
Thank
just
you
say
so much for having us.
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and please accept my sincere apologies for being so late. You've raised some really important, and I can see the thought and work that's gone into it. I feel guilty. It's my generation that has used up all. I feel as though I'm part of the cause of the global warming. I'm trying to do my best. I've got my LED light bulbs. I've given up my car. But you've pointed out, I think as well, the thought that's gone into just thinking locally of the little things that we can all do to try and save our planet. I feel that my generation has had the best of everything, but we've spoilt a lot of things. You know, and I too have grandchildren, and I want to make any difference I can, however small, to make the world a better place for yourselves and future generations. So thank you so much for bringing those very important topics to us. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next agenda item. You're more than welcome to stay with us. I don't know if you have a time to be back home by. Do you want to stay or go? Are you going to go? All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
It's
for having
my
us.
favourite meeting of the year. you've, yeah. Yeah. It's just great to see the guys here in person. Yeah, all right. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you. Bring them back now if you want. Yeah. Do you want, bring them in.
Alex, put the thing mask underneath it, otherwise it vibrates.
Yeah. Where's the best place for them to go? Yeah. Do they want to come and stand? Can I just say how sorry I am that I was late? Just got caught up. Councillor Young was just saying she'd not had a chance to do some intros, so, and I can see a few new faces here, so can we just go round and do a quick round of intros? So I'm the late Denise Weston, and I oh no, I'm sorry, only just and I chair this committee, obviously.
Jane Hines from the Public Health team.
Hi, I'm Donna Sager. I'm a consultant in public health.
Hi, I'm Kath Hines. I'm the lead member for Children's Services.
Evening, everybody. I'm Jill McGregor. I'm the Corporate Director for Children's Services here in Trafford.
Hi, I'm Jude Brown. I'm the Strategic Lead for Practice Improvement and Learning for Children's Services.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ferraioli, the new Governance Officer upstairs.
Hello, I'm Amy White, Councillor in Broadheath Ward.
Jane Dillon, Councillor in Davyhulme East.
Hi, I'm Adele New. I'm a Bucklow Ward Councillor. That's Partington, Carrington and Sale West.
I'm Sue Maitland. I'm councillor for Davyhulme West. I must stop saying that. Davyhulme West.
I'm the not so late David Atson. Yet.
Do we need to wait for Alex to come back, or shall we go ahead? Yeah, okay. So we're going on to the first report, which is an update on the recruitment and retention of social workers. I know the reports were late, and I appreciate the reasons why, but we have had the report. So I could ask that you give us an overview of the report, and then we'll have an opportunity for members to ask questions.
So just by way of introduction, Jude's going to talk us through this report because, as you've intimated, there's a lot of activity going on in this space. And I know that we've benefited from member support in terms of tackling some of our recruitment and retention issues. And I know it's an area that you're hugely interested in. So without saying any more, I'll hand over to Jude, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you. And apologies to Councillor Hines, this is the second time you'll have heard this report today. It was on our improvement board this morning. So it is quite a detailed report, so I will just try and pull out the main points. Obviously, at the start of the report, you've got information that was presented at the last scrutiny, which includes some of the big things that we had to do, which was redesign the service, and that's just to confirm that did go live in October. We did roll out our care and confidence modules of the Strengthening Practice programme. That is a completely bespoke package for Trafford, and that was around making sure that we were looking after our staff through a pandemic, through an improvement journey, and through redesign. We felt that was really important. And then we've done a number of things to actually have a really systematic and targeted approach to our recruitment and retention. So the really pleasing things to note that you'll see detailed in the chart that I've put in the report is that in Q2 we did see quite a high number of our social work staff leaving, and there was a number of reasons for that, which I think has been before scrutiny previously, so I won't labour too much on that point. The really pleasing thing to note is that you can see a steady reduction of the number of people that are choosing to leave in terms of permanent staff. We definitely saw that continue to stabilise through the rest of Q3, and also what I can say is we continue to see that as we come to the end of Q4. So I think we are in a period of sustained stabilisation. I'm not going to say that people don't leave, because people do. They choose to leave for very different reasons. But again, it feels a little bit more business as usual rather than that high turnover that we were seeing. So just in terms of the categories, there's some detail there in the information that we collate from when we do have people that choose to leave. And I think what's really interesting is through the first part of this reporting year, work culture, workload were the top two reasons that people chose to leave. However, in this quarter, we've seen that slightly change. So we are seeing personal reasons and choices. And then underneath that those few bullet points, I've actually put in the report about where people go on to, and you'll see there that 46% of our leavers actually say that they're going to go to a different local authority, and 24% state that actually they're going to move on to agency work. Most of that is around financial elements for people. What is really interesting when we looked at some of the information is that almost 10% were actually saying that they were reviewing whether they wanted to carry on in social work at all, basically. And I think it's really important to note that that is not just a Trafford issue. I think regionally and nationally we are seeing that, and I don't think it's just a social work issue either. I think probably seeing that in different parts of public service. Some feedback there as well around why when people leave, this is what they tell us. There were real positives in there around people feeling that they were supported. They did have regular one-to-ones. Where we didn't sort of report as highly was around inductions and appraisals, but it's really important for us to note that those staff that left were before we'd reviewed the induction processes. So whilst we reviewed the dedicated children's induction programme, what we're not going to do is just wait for the next person to leave to tell us that it had or hadn't worked. We've actually building in some systematic checks and balances. So within the first month of any new starter, there was an expectation of, did you have an induction and how was it? So that we're really sort of catching that. And there's some more information in the report which actually came from the social work health check, and it was really pleasing to note that, you know, those sentences there in bold. I think one of the things that I felt quite heartened by is that I feel safe in my role and the work that I'm expected to do. And we know that one of our principles around retention is that people don't often leave for pay and financial issues, apart from, obviously, as I've said, the 24% that did. The most people leave because they don't feel supported. So that was really positive to read. There's some more details in there around the care and confidence programme, which I won't go into detail. Hopefully I have covered that. But what I will say is just draw your attention to the feedback that we've had from Strengthening Practice around working with our practitioners. And they've fed back, as did the DFE recent review. There's a really strong value base within our practitioners that's been consistently demonstrated through the first half of the programme. And I think some of the terminology we're using is children at the centre of what we do here in Trafford, and it almost runs through us like a stick of rock. So to have that external feedback as well was really heartening. Critical element now is turning all of that passion and value into change for children and young people. We're now at the point where we are preparing for the core skills part of the programme to be delivered. And whilst there are some bottom lines within that, as in we know we need to strengthen our assessments and plans and how we work with families, we do want to do some collaboration with our practitioners and what is going to be most helpful to them through that programme. In terms of the workforce profile, what you'll see there is the number of ASYEs. There are brand new, newly qualified social workers. When I started work in Trafford in October 2020, I think we had about 9 ASYEs. And as you'll see there, we've almost doubled that, and we have doubled it through the year. Really pleasing to report that the decrease has become because we've had successful practitioners actually completing their ASYE year. And you can see also in there how we've continued to grow, because our ASYEs are our future and are the experienced practitioners of the future. You'll also see that there is a slight reduction in the number of permanent social workers. Again, it's just to reiterate, there's the number of exits have reduced. So that slight dip is business as usual. On the flip side of that, the numbers of agency staff has slightly increased. However, 5 of those are actually covering secondment arrangements and maternity leave cover. In terms of the 12-month turnover figure, obviously that is much higher than we'd want it to be. However, we were significantly impacted in quarter 2 as part of those quite significant exits that I've already talked about. In terms of the data and what that looks like, it's just to remember that is a 12-month turnover. So that will take us some months to chip away at to reduce. Where we are seeing some of our turnover is within our agency staffing. We recognise that it is still much higher than we would want it. However, there are a number of agency staff who have been with us quite a significant amount of time. Some of those we've been able to talk to and support in becoming permanent members of staff. I think it was 5 at the last count, 2 into management posts, 1 into an advanced practitioner and 2 into a permanent social worker post. So we are literally trying every avenue to keep these conversations going. We have reviewed what the offer to agency staff could be with HR colleagues, although we've got to be really mindful that that isn't to the detriment of our permanent staff. There is some work that the North West Association for Directors of Children's Services are doing in terms of actually this is a regional issue. So regionally, can we do something, including a not-for-profit agency resourcing framework, having a cap on agency rates, and also there's a basic requirement that ASYEs shouldn't be going into agency work. But actually, it's just to note to the committee that in Trafford, we don't have any agency staff who are ASYEs, because that is a contradiction of our principles and values. So just moving on in terms of recruitment activity, what I've put within the paper is a table of its vacancies against the establishment, the agency cover that we have badged against those vacancies, and then the true picture of what the vacancies are in terms of nobody in that post and nobody covering it. And hopefully you can see in there that we've got very, very few posts that actually aren't covered, which is positive, because 6 months ago that looked a very different picture. I used to rag rate it and there were quite a lot of reds on it. So in terms of recruitment, we've got a continual programme of recruitment. We have our rolling advert through our Greater Jobs network platform. We've also engaged Tripod as our external recruitment partner. We've completely refreshed the recruitment material. We've completely rebranded. We have a microsite which is really vibrant, that is now live. We've got video testimonials from practitioners in there about what it's actually like to work in Trafford, and how we really do make the grass greener in Trafford. We've got our first webinar planned for tomorrow. Jill's already done a recording for that, and we have a number of practitioners joining us on that call. And the idea is that people can start to get to know us before they choose whether they want to come or not. So again, building those relationships. In terms of the management and leadership posts, I did just want to update the committee that since the last time that we updated the committee in February, we have recruited 2 more heads of service on a permanent basis. So we only will have one as an interim, and we're going to hold that as an interim, as that is linked to the next part of the redesign, early help. So it's really important we don't introduce more changes. The head of service for vulnerable adolescents, that's really positive because that's been out 3 times for advert, and we're super excited about that candidate coming to join us. There's some details there around some of the practice managers' roles that we currently have out for advert, and again, we just continue to turn around as quickly as we can when we get applications, shortlist, get those interviews out there, keep people interested, and make them feel valued before they even walk through the door. So in conclusion, investing in our people is underpinned by an action plan, which hopefully you've had as part of the papers. It continues to be our priority, and we continue to work on the many strands that we have to try and attract and retain new and current staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Dillon.
Slightly random one here. I'm just wondering if social workers get training on EHCPs. I know not all kids, Jill's looking, not all kids that have social workers obviously will have an EHCP. I'm just nosiness really after that. Thank you.
It's not nosiness, and I wouldn't have expected any less from you, Councillor Dillon. And you'll be pleased to know that we've already done some training on EHCPs in our practice fortnight that happened in November. We're making some changes to the electronic recording system so that it's easier for all social workers to access and see the EHCPs. Jude is working with colleagues from across the service, some of our education colleagues on quality assurance processes for EHCPs and other topic that's close to your heart, I think, in terms of the quality of those plans. But we recognise that the very point that you're making, the majority of children with EHCPs do not sit within the children with additional needs service, so we need to make it a shared responsibility. We've got 2 whole service briefing sessions happening tomorrow and Friday, and one of the topics is all things to do with SEND. So that's for every practitioner across children's services, and working up a really detailed plan of ongoing training. Because you're right, you know, unless you experience it, unless you're used to working in that space, there are some obvious things that we do need to strengthen.
I think you've covered. I was going to ask a question about what does the induction actually consist of, and would it scope across things like SEND and EHCPs? But I think you've more or less answered that, Jill.
So one of the other things that we're doing is when people come new to us, they need to understand the range of services, who to go to, what to navigate. And I think it's not just an issue for social work or social care professionals, but it's a partnership. So one of the things that we'll be rolling out probably before summer is a partnership induction. So that if you come, like I did, to Trafford and you don't know what services we have, who our really vibrant third sector partners are, who do I go to if I've got a question about EHCPs? So really thinking much more broadly than just in a narrow little bubble. So some exciting things that we've got in train.
Thank you. Councillor Acton.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the report. I think it is pleasing around the levers that you know, this quarter it's reduced quite significantly. And looking at prior to the refresh, reasons given was for leaving. That reported that they did not feel that they'd had received coaching and mentoring to help them develop. So I'm assuming that the coaching and mentoring is now actually much improved. And can you explain? Can you explain what actually happens through that process of coaching and mentoring, and how long does the mentoring last?
It's a good question. Coaching and mentoring should be the culture in how we practice and how we work with people, not just our staff, but our families as well. It is improving picture. What we've got to do is develop the confidence in our managers and our advanced practitioners in those skills. And I think that having the strengthening practice, helping deliver the care and confidence has helped with some of that. I also think setting the tone from a senior leadership point of view and bringing all of our new managers and heads of service into our leadership forum, which takes place once every 2 weeks on a Monday morning. It's how Pamela, who sort of leads on that, it's how we set some of the tone and how we have the conversations with people and with our managers. I think there's more to do. And we are, again, talking with strengthening practice around, we know we've got the EPIC Managers programme, but actually how do we continue that? How do you have a reflective conversation with a practitioner? How do you coach and you mentor them to try and challenge their own thinking and your own? And I think we've started to see the shoots of it, but I think we've definitely still got more to do. I hope that's answered that, Councillor Acton.
So if I can just come in, Councillor Acton, one of the things that we did in the redesign was reshape our advanced practitioner roles. So previously, the advanced practitioner roles were for those practitioners that have been with us a long time and almost as if you've earned your stripes because you've been with us a while, whereas actually we've made a requirement of that post to be somebody that supports a peer within their team, that helps our newly qualified social workers, that gives the top tips about how to write a good plan, how to write a good assessment. So as Jude's saying, it's not a time limited offer that you will have a coach for a fixed period of time. It's the way that we're doing things around here in Trafford. As you know, we had Ofsted in last week, and one of the things that they really noticed was an improvement in the quality of our supervision to our staff, which, you know, good quality supervision should be reflective. It should include some of that coaching and that mentoring. So as Jude says, we're not there yet, but we are seeing tangible improvements in terms of what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maitland. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Just with regards to the personal and professional development of the social workers, of the managers, senior managers, do you have a 360 sort of look at that, you know, getting feedback from all angles?
So what we've done is we've developed the supervision framework, and as part of that, it's not just about the supervision and the decision making around children, but how is our practitioner doing, how is our manager doing, how are we helping them grow and help retain them. We haven't built a 360 into that, but I think it's definitely something that we would like to do and build that into the future supervision programme.
I mean, as well as the things that we do specifically and bespokely in terms of children's social care, our practitioners and our managers do have their EPIC check-ins as well, and that gives a check and a balance about progress, continuous professional development. All social workers have to, as part of their social work registration, say what they've done in the last 12 months and how that fits with the key skills in terms of that professional registration. Again, one of the really pleasing things that we're starting to see is more observations of practice, because one of the best ways to understand whether somebody's doing a good job with a child or a family that they're working with is to actually observe what they're saying, to come back to the building or the virtual space and say, that was really strong, you did that really well, but Jill, you talk too much and you need to listen more, you know, or whatever it happens to be, but that live observation and that live learning, so that we're continually growing and sustaining our practitioners.
I'm thinking of service users as well here, you know, as well as peer observation, that sort of thing. Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask, following on from Councillor Maitland's question, do we ask for feedback from our service users? Is there any upward feedback as well? I've always liked to give and receive upward feedback in companies I've worked for on a more corporate level, but I think to ask for upward feedback and perhaps make it anonymous from your staff, because people will be frightened of saying, but I'm sure service users would be much more outspoken if they're dissatisfied with the service.
One of the really exciting things that we've started to do is to introduce our live audits with our service users. Small numbers at the moment, but that does involve going out, having a conversation, saying, how was it for you? What did we do well? What didn't we do well? Needing to think about the timing of when you do those live conversational audits, because if you do it at tea time when all of the kids are around, it's probably not going to be a very productive period of time. Being persistent, because someone might say, oh no, I don't fancy doing that, but actually it's really important to us and we can learn from you. So baby steps in terms of that, because you'll know from your own experience that if you do something through surveys or returns, the return rate is very low, and it would be much better to explore that in depth with somebody. So that's one of the things that we are doing. We do have surveys that go out, particularly linked to the end of assessments, for example, but the return on that isn't particularly good. The social work health check that Jude referenced is one of the ways where we do get that upward feedback in terms of what does that look like, what's your experience of management. And obviously across the whole council, we do the pulse survey. We slightly delayed that over the last year, for obvious reasons, because it felt like taking a health check when people were struggling in terms of the conditions that we've all been working in. But that will be something that comes back on stream.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hines, did you have a question?
I guess it's kind of connected to the question. And you're part of the corporate parenting board as well, Councillor Weston. So you'll be in those meetings when we do get feedback from our children and young people, and that feedback I think is really, really powerful. And one of the things that they consistently tell us is that they are impacted by the changes in social workers. So having a number of changes in their social workers, does cause them some uncertainty, and it's something that I think that makes the retention and recruitment of our social workers absolutely critical, that we keep the social workers that we've got, so that we can keep that level of consistency. So we do get that feedback, and they give us feedback on everything, as you know, which is great. And we want to work to build the engagement as far and wide as we can do with our children and young people, so that we're getting a range of voices, and that we make sure that we listen to them.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, thank you for the report. It's very reassuring. I'm glad to see we're moving in the right direction. And if we can move on to the next item, along the same vein, really, but the recruitment and retention of foster carers.
Thank you, and apologies, you're going to have to listen to me, not the head of service. We've newly recruited to our provider service in terms of the group of services that include our fostering service, our residential children's homes, and it's day 11 for our new head of service. So I didn't think it was particularly fair to ask them to come and talk to the report. What I did want to start with is recognising the fantastic work that our foster carers do. The nature of fostering has changed immeasurably, I think, over years, and at times it can be very complex, very challenging, but equally it can be hugely rewarding. And we have foster carers that have been incredibly loyal to us here in Trafford, and they don't just care for our children, they love our children, and they do the very best for our children. So I think it would be wrong of me to have a report that talks about foster care recruitment and retention without recognising the tremendous work that they do. Having said that, one of the things that I'm sure is the reason why this committee is interested in this issue is that we have had some challenges around recruitment activity. A little bit like the social work recruitment, it's a national issue, and it's very much a focus of the Children's Social Care Review for Josh McAllister. We've done some big things in terms of the service, in terms of trying to take that forward. And one of the first things that we did is that Pamela and myself had a number of meetings with a range of our foster carers. And it was really important that we listened to them, to what their experience was, the things that they felt went well, and the things that they felt didn't go so well. We also recognise that one of the areas of service that have been significantly impacted by change and culture was the fostering service. And we have completely restructured that service into 3 discrete areas. A team that focuses on assessing foster carers, a team that focuses on support for foster carers, and recognising that we have a number of connected carers. They're usually family members, people with a relationship to a child and care for a named child, but actually we need to get the support to those carers right. We've spent quite a bit of time, and it might sound silly, but we've spent quite a bit of time really questioning, who are our children in care? How long have they been in care? What are their needs? What is it that we need to think about? And you'll see from the 4 pie charts in the report that half of our children are over the age of 10, that a significant proportion of our children, 79%, have been in our care for over 2 years. The great thing about that is that offers some stability, but it also means that we have a lot of children that we've been looking after for a long time. A number of those are with members of their own family, which is why we said we need to think about the support that we give to family. We recognise as well that where we have not been as strong in terms of offering our own in-house placements is for brothers and sisters who need to live together. There's a number of our foster carers only have the capacity in the physical space to care for 1 or 2 children. And if you've got a large sibling group of 5, we are needing to go to the independent sector for that. Inevitably, the pandemic has impacted on recruitment activity, but even before that, our recruitment activity was not as strong as we wanted it to be. And one of the reasons that we have strengthened the staffing levels in the fostering service is so that we can be more responsive. Some of the things that our carers would tell us are, well, when my supervising social worker isn't there, I'm getting somebody on duty. I don't have a relationship with that person. I want to have a consistent person. We know that we're very good at getting initial inquiries, but what we're not so good at is converting those into real assessments, people that want to pursue a career and their work in terms of fostering. The report contains the detail of what that looks like. And as you will see, one of our biggest issues has been that we've actually lost more carers than we've recruited in the year. Some of that is life choices, so people who are coming to the end of their fostering career who have made decisions that they want to retire. Some of that has been through adverse circumstances such as a bereavement or a health issue, which fundamentally can lead people to change and think about what's right for them, what's right for their families. Some of that has been because we've needed to address some issues about whether the quality of care was good enough and would this be good enough for our own children. What we have started to do is engage both at a GM level and to progress some things locally here in Trafford that we think are really innovative, that will help us to attract more people. We've engaged in digital responses, seen a lot of hits in terms of adverts and using digital media as an initial interest, but that's not translating into ongoing assessments. So we have agreed that we will go back to some of those people in a year's time. We're seeing a lot of women, for example, on mobile phones. Oh, that looks interesting. I'll have a little look at that. But then that not coming to something. So we need to better understand that. We have worked to speed up our recruitment processes. And whilst we've only recruited 4 new mainstream carers, we've continued to recruit a lot of connected carers, friends and family carers. And we've also converted some of those carers to be special guardians. So this year we will have had 21 people go on to become special guardians. So that means instead of having the level of intrusion from having to do your named fostering training, have a social worker come every 6 weeks to see you, that people are given the responsibility for caring for their nieces, nephews, grandchildren, but that's underpinned by a legal order. We've done quite a bit of benchmarking with other local authorities, and I think you'll see on page 10 of the report that our figures in terms of approvals look quite low in comparison to some of those local authorities that have responded. I think we need to go back and just check whether that includes friends and family carers as well, because we've excluded our friends and family carers. So I think there might be a little bit of a distortion there. A little bit like the workforce report that we've talked about, we have a dedicated project fostering. So we have a dedicated plan that includes how are we going to recruit more carers? How are we going to better support our carers? What are we going to do to retain and sustain them? And that's been quite a deliberate approach. So starting from that, listening to our foster carers so that we can use their knowledge, skills and expertise to think about how we attract new in. And equally, just like the social work report, listening to what our carers want in terms of ongoing support. We have to get that right. And we've worked hard at that, but we've still got more to do. So the report references some of the bespoke support groups, the male carers group, and some of the things that carers have said. If we continue with our peer mentoring, for example, that is something that we find really, really helpful. I guess at that point, because you have got a detailed report, one of the more interesting things would be to open it up for questions, because I know it's an area that you all feel passionately about, and I'm sure you will want to probe and challenge.
Do any members have questions? Can I take Councillor Maitland and then Councillor Dillon?
I appreciate what you're doing in a Greater Manchester way of thinking and working, but have we gone more national? Have we looked even further apart out to see, are there some absolutely fantastic experts out there?
So one of the projects that is mentioned in the report is the work that we're doing with Trafford Housing Trust. So we've got a national organisation, Quorum, working with us, and it's based on some work that was initiated in Islington. So actually looking at, if we look at bespoke housing solutions for existing carers, whether they can actually care for more children rather than just the one or the two children, really understanding what those housing needs are, but equally thinking about some of our ambitious projects in terms of new build and how we can maybe incentivise in terms of some of that social housing and people being a carer for us. So in short, yes, we are looking at what is best practice. We are being quite daring. Greater Manchester are really interested in seeing how our project with Trafford Housing Trust goes, because it's something that's been talked about, but we've put our toe in the water to try and develop that. Some of the things that we do to support carers, like our PACE training, is benchmarked on national best practice. So always looking, but it is a national issue in terms of recruitment of foster carers.
Councillor Dillon.
Can I be really cheeky and ask a question that's about fostering, but not exactly about the subject? Is that okay? I'm just really interested in how you choose where, if you get a child that is in need of going to somebody's home, how do you choose where that child goes? Is it about who's got the space? That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
No, it's not about who's got the space. So we need to think about the needs of that child. We need to think about the skills of that foster carer. We need to think about what their reviews say about how placements that they might have had previously have gone. So we have a rigorous matching process. Sometimes we do have to make difficult decisions, though, because, you know, if somebody hasn't got somewhere to sleep at night, sometimes we have to think, what can we do to support this to make it the best it possibly can be? But it does have to be needs-led rather than there's a bed over there.
Councillor Acton.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really important subject for the council. We probably all know that if you can foster, I think it is the best probably that you can have in terms of the provision, if it's done right, obviously. And it is actually less expensive as well. So there's two things, isn't there, to the equation, and it's how we actually address those two issues, really, because one goes with the other. Because if you're paying out a lot of money to have another provision rather than a foster carer, then you know those children are losing out in a way. So I know that you try and everything that you possibly can, and recognise that because I'm on the parenting board, and I'm hoping that we will get there. But it is disappointing that, you know, we're one of the lowest in sort of recruiting, and it's you know, it's really important that we find out exactly why that is, and you know, put it right, basically. But you know, I don't want to be critical, but I think it is. I think it is such an important matter, and I think everybody kind of recognises.
I think there's a couple of things. You're absolutely right. Our recruitment rate is not where we want it to be. So at the start of the year, we set a target of 15, and we haven't recruited 15 new mainstream carers. We'll have recruited 4. We've got 4 more in train. So as we go into the new financial year, we'll start from a position of achieving what we've done in the whole year in that very short period. That in itself tells a story, doesn't it? That the activity and the energy wasn't where it needs to be. I think it's really important that we recognise, like I say, over 50% of our children in our care live with a family member, either with their own parents or with a connected carer. So understanding that has been really important to us to think about why is that. The biggest marketing strategy that anywhere can have is word of mouth. It's the same for our social workers. It's the same for our foster carers. If we make Trafford the local authority of choice for our foster carers, if we get the support offer right to them, if we listen to what works for them and value their skills and expertise, then word of mouth is a very, very powerful tool, isn't it? So that's why some of the things that we've needed to do in this year have been to almost re-engage with some of our carers, to hear the things that have gone really well, to celebrate those successes, but equally to hear some of the things that hasn't been such a positive experience for them. Because you're right, it's not just cost effective, you know, people should have a right to living in a family, shouldn't they? Our approach to permanence and the work that we're doing that has started from the best place for children to live and grow is in their families, wherever it's safe to do so. If it's not safe to do so, then we want to make sure that they have loving family homes, and we need to make sure that we get the support to our foster carers right to enable that. So I don't think it's a criticism, Councillor Acton. I think it's a very appropriate challenge. The figures are not where we need to be, and we need to improve.
Can I just come back just very slightly, really? Why I was mentioning the resources, that if we put, and it's a chicken and the egg really, but if we put the resource from the areas where we don't have a better result for the child into the foster carers to give that support. I know it's not all about money, but it is about staff time and things like that. So to be able to give that kind of support to the you know, to the foster carers, because that's what they say that they need, don't they? Really, as much support as they possibly can. I'm not saying that they don't get the support. I'm saying that, you know, if we want to be the best, then we've got to give them the best support, really.
And some of the things that they say are really helpful in terms of support is things like our looked after children's CAMS team. And one of the things at the moment is the lead psychologist has left. She's emigrated with her husband to somewhere, I think, like the Cayman Islands, somewhere really exotic. So we're in the process of recruiting to that post. That's a health-led post, so health colleagues are recruiting to it. And we know that our foster carers really value that support, and some of that isn't necessarily about direct interventions with children. It's about the strategies. You know, if you've got somebody that's really distressed and breaking things or trying to climb out of windows, and we do have some children with that level of distress, how you cope and manage with that, you've not just got to be confident, you will have questions. You know, looking after children who go missing is hugely anxiety provoking. So you're absolutely right. The support and the care that we give to the people that are caring for our children is really, really important. And it is an invest to save. You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Can I take Councillor New first and then Councillor Maitland again?
Yeah, it's more of an observation, really, kind of based upon what you just said there. I worked with looked after children in Trafford children's homes for just over 10 years. And I worked mainly with teenagers, and the amount of emotional resilience, sense of humour, just the complete madness sometimes that you were seeing on a shift. You know, you couldn't describe it to somebody. And we had some people who would come into the role. You know, we had an ex-fireman, we had an ex-boys brigade leader, and these were people who felt they were really equipped. You know, they'd seen some really rough things. They dealt with some really emotional situations. You're faced with a 13-year-old child who's so emotionally distressed he's trying to remove his face with a razor blade. Nothing can prepare you for that. But then I think that there's quite a lot of some of the advertisements that I see. It's not quite realistic enough. It's not quite, you know, this is going to take all of your resource, because as you said, you know, a young person who's continually going missing, and when you know what's happening to that young person when they're continually going missing, and there is nothing you can do to prevent that situation because of the, you know, the law and things like that, it takes so much, doesn't it? And I think with the best will in the world, if you've also got your own children and your partner, and you know, this is having this effect on you, I just think, you know, sometimes I think, you know, kind of give people the worst possible case scenario, and then everything else is a bit more of a blessing. That's how I went into residential work with, you know, like sometimes, and I know it sounds awful, you'd be thinking, well, nobody died last night, and sometimes that's how bad it is, you know.
And I guess there's two things in that, Councillor New. The first thing that I would say, I think the best of us started in residential care. I include myself in that. And whilst I'm being flippant there, I think it is a very serious point that actually, unless you've shared some of those experiences, it is very difficult to anticipate and imagine what that looks like. The nature of fostering has changed immeasurably. So some of the people that were interested in being carers for us, we've had to say, not now, because they were only people that could take very young babies. We don't have that need. Our greatest gap is for siblings, brothers and sisters who can live together, and teenagers. And sometimes just the relentless nature of some of the trauma that our teenagers have experienced does mean that you need more than one person. So for some of our children, living in group living in residential is the right option. And I think it's a really well-made point. Our carers, whether they happen to be residential staff or foster carers, the amount of personal resilience that you need. So we need to make sure not just that the support is really high quality, but the training, and that some of the things that Jude talked about in terms of coaching and mentoring, and just come on, let's have a cuppa. You know, we have progressed our peer mentoring scheme, and just having somebody that can empathise and say, I know what you're going through, is really, really important. So thank you for sharing that. I didn't know that's where you'd spent some of your time in your career earlier. But like I say, I think residential care is a good place to start.
Thank you. Councillor Maitland, did you have another question?
Could you just, I couldn't print out in colour, and
know,
it was the
it's
figures
difficult,
really,
yeah.
it's difficult to see. How many children have we got with internal foster carers at the moment, and how many are with external at the moment?
So overall, we've got 372 children in our care at the moment. And in terms of our internal foster carers, we've got 101 children. It's in one of the tables as well, further on in the report, Councillor Maitland. We've got 113 children that are living with their connected carers. And we've got 75 children that are living with their own parents. And that's what I mean. Half of our children are living with their own families or relatives. So there's something about balance and practice as well for us to think about. So out of those children that are in our care but not with relatives, the majority are with our foster carers.
How many with external? I can't make out which one.
It says on the chart 31, but I think it's gone up by one. It's 32 at the moment.
It's difficult to know on ours because it's not colour.
Much easier.
Nikki Bishop would shout at me, wouldn't she, for printing out in colour?
I know, but we can't tell what's what with it.
So those 31 children, though,
they're in independent fostering agencies, yes.
Yeah, and that's really costly, isn't it? And I suppose
it's not as costly as external residential. They are our most expensive. So the average cost of an external residential placement is about £4,000 a week, and my most expensive one at the moment is £7,000 a week.
My goodness me.
Just to say, sorry, I didn't say that. Just to say, some of those external residential placements are needed though as well. We do have some young people who do need that level of support, and we do need them to be. So it is really, really expensive, and it wouldn't, it would never be something that we would opt for or choose, but there are sometimes occasions where that's needed. But in terms of the independent foster agency, that again wouldn't be our choice, and that's why it's so important definitely so important that we recruit our own, definitely.
And just to come back in on the external fostering placements, the majority of those are for brothers and sisters that need to live together. So our gap in terms of where we want to target for our recruitment is for older young people that can successfully live in families, and for brothers and sisters to be able to live together, which is why the innovative work around housing solutions, so she can take more than one child as a foster carer, it really links into what our gap is.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for the report. I'm particularly pleased to see that there's more being put into place to support our foster carers who do a fantastic job. It must have been so difficult, particularly through the pandemic and over the last couple of years for them. So thank you. And I think that's all I've got to say. Sorry. Can we move on to the next item, which is healthy weight amongst children? We have had the reports in advance, but if you could give us an overview, if you wouldn't mind, of the highlights and what work's being done to improve the situation. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. It's fine. There's not much on the slides. I'll just read them because they're behind you anyway. So, brief overview of the report. Healthy weight in children and young people. There's a strong social gradient in excess weight. So children living in our most deprived communities have much higher rates of excess weight. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, those inequalities have widened due to the impact of COVID. That's not just in Trafford, that's nationally. It's been seen from our National Child Measurement Programme measurements across the country, across the Northwest. So not just us, unfortunately. The downside is that there's currently not really a very strong evidence base in terms of what works to support children and young people to lose weight once they're at the point where they are overweight. And so one of the things that has been happening nationally has been that the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, formerly Public Health England, have working with 11 local authority areas to pilot some different ways of working with children and young people and their families to support them to lose weight. But but we don't know any of the results of those yet. But the aim is to start to build that evidence base, because with adult weight management, there's loads and loads of evidence in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what settings and kind of what skills people need. We just don't have that for children and young people at the moment, which makes it a little bit harder. So in terms of the work we currently do in Trafford, we deliver the National Child Measurement Programme, NCMP for short, with children in reception and Year 6. Last year, it was reduced to a 10% sample because of all the pressures within schools and within the school health team. There's also a 2.5-year check where height and weight of children is measured and recorded. But I think that the uptake of that, understand it's self-reported. So if parents don't want to submit that information, then we don't have such great data. We have support for children, young people and families from school nurses and health visitors. So they will proactively pick up where they do have those measurements. They will do interventions with those families to support them around healthy eating and being more active. During the NCMP programme as well, the school nurses will deliver a healthy lifestyle talk to every Year 6 class when they go in to do those measurements. And following the measurements, there's then proactive contact with the families of the children who are in the very overweight category. So before they get a feedback letter, the school nurses will generally ring those families and talk through the results and explain to them what that means and what support is available. And we also have a children and young people specialist weight management service, which is provided by MFT. And that's for children who are above the 98th centile, so in the very overweight category. And also if children are in the overweight category, but if there are any safeguarding concerns, they'll also be seen through that service. Again, during COVID, that service was stood down. So there have been significant waiting lists, which are now, I think, just about getting to the stage that they were pre-COVID. And the school nurse and health visitor support is now back up and running. So again, school nurses were absolutely to capacity dealing with the vaccination programme and other things that we're putting onto them. So in terms of, because we don't have a national evidence base that tells us what works and what we should commission, one of the pieces of work that I've been working on with colleagues is to try and build our local evidence base and actually pilot some programmes and look at what might work for our Trafford families. So we want to know what some of the kind of more formal trials and pilots are doing across the country, but we're also trying to look at what works locally as well. So we've been working with Foundation 92, who are the community foundation from Salford City Football Club. And they've developed a family healthy lifestyle programme, which they've been focusing on the areas that experience the greatest health inequalities. So they've worked with families in Sale West, Partington and Stretford. They've had most of their referrals through the early help team so far, which has been really positive. And it's looking at a whole family approach, talking to families around healthy eating, food, getting more active, but also a big focus on mental well-being as well. It's perfect timing that I'm getting the first kind of set of real outcomes and results from those next week. So I can't unfortunately share those with you, but kind of anecdotally, the family feedback has been that it's been really helpful and really positive programme, but we need to kind of see what those outcomes are in terms of people's behaviours and whether that has an impact on the weight and the health of children within those families. We're also working with the Healthy Learning Trust, Flixton Girls School. They've developed a programme, similar healthy lifestyle programme, but based in schools for primary schools. And again, we're working with our sports club foundations because they already work within primary schools. They've got the links there. They're used to working with those children. They're going to be trained to deliver the core strength programme, which again focuses on food, on physical activity and mental well-being. And there's also a lot of stuff in there around kind of confidence, self-esteem and so self-efficacy around children's health. And we're going to, the training for that is taking place in April. And it's going to be piloted with the 10 primary schools in Trafford, which we know have got higher than average excess weight in reception and year 6. So focusing on the schools where we know that we've already got higher rates of excess weight. And delivery of that will be starting after Easter. So this is us basically trying to build our evidence base and look at what works locally. So assuming all those programmes get the results and the outcomes that we want them to achieve, we then have support from school nurses and health visitors working on a one-to-one level. We've got the specialist weight management team, again, working with individual families. And then we'd have some community focus and some school focus, more holistic, healthy lifestyle programs as well. So trying to look at a range of things, a range of interventions, which would hopefully most families would find something within that range that would work for their family. We're also, one of the national pilot sites is in Tameside, and also made contact with them to find out kind of what their initial programs look like and what the results have been. It's obviously a very different demographic from Trafford, but they're the most local site, so looking to learn from them as well. So in terms of our next steps, the healthy weight strategy, the draft has been signed off by the Health and Wellbeing Board. So the next step is public consultation on the strategy, and then to co-produce an action plan later on this year. And we want to involve our residents in producing that action plan. It's no good people sitting in a meeting room and deciding what we think. We actually want to work with our residents, say, well, what would help you? What are the barriers? We know that there are going to be issues around access and affordability of healthy food, and also the combination of that with rising fuel prices, that it's all very well, you may be able to afford to buy the food, but if you then can't afford to put your oven on to cook the food. So we've got it's going to be a really huge piece of work that we need to look at what we can do to address a really complex issue, really. There's some work that the Food Standards Agency are looking to pilot with environmental health teams in terms of school food standards. So I'm not sure if people are aware, there's school food standards that all maintained schools should adhere to. Anecdotally, I think it's variable in terms of how well those are adhered to, but also the standards themselves aren't particularly stringent. So this piece of work that the Food Standards Agency are looking to do is for when environmental health officers do their food safety checks, that they can also review the school food standards within each school as well. So we're hoping to be one of the pilot sites that will deliver that piece of work. And as I said, we need to evaluate the outcomes from the pilot programs that we're working on now, and use that to inform our commissioning moving forwards. And I think that is everything. So hopefully that's a bit of a shorter summary of the report.
Oh, that's great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? So I'll take Councillor Acton and then Councillor New, please.
Yeah, it was just on the where it says on page 2 there is currently no guidance on different BMI ranges for Black and minority ethnic children. So does that cause you a lot of problems? Or, you know, why are those differences?
So for adults, there are different BMI cutoff points. And this goes back to, there's been loads of research in adults and less in children. So for adults, particularly from a South Asian background, at a lower BMI, they're more likely to experience some of the health conditions related to excess weight, things like diabetes, at a lower BMI than people from a white background. There just isn't the evidence for children. There have been some kind of standalone studies which have said that it's likely that BMI overestimates excess weight in children from a Black background, but it's not, there's only been kind of 1 or 2 studies that say that. So it's kind of emerging evidence that makes it really difficult, because to answer your question in terms of does it cause us many problems, it can do when a parent receives an NCMP letter, Googles whatever it might be, comes up with 1 or 2 studies and says, well, this says, and they're quite right that it may have an impact. At the moment, the guidance is in the absence of any better evidence, we have the BMI categories and cut-offs that we have, but we do have to understand that they may not be appropriate for everyone, but for the vast majority, they will be. So it's a really difficult one.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Young, and then Councillor New had a question as well?
I just wondered, because I've been looking at the children in the school of which I'm a governor, but I'm in a part of Trafford where possibly the children are not so likely to be overweight because it's the better off part of the borough. And frankly, looking at the children in St Vincent's School, where I'm a governor, you don't really see many children who are overweight. I was wondering, do you actually have any figures as to exactly where in Trafford the problems are, and what is the proportion of children in Trafford who are having the problems? And actually, again, has it been narrowed down to which are the children who are overweight purely because they don't exercise enough, as opposed to the ones who maybe have diabetes or whatever it is, who are overweight because of an illness?
Yeah, so through the National Child Measurement Programme, we have data at a school level and an individual level. At an individual level, it's used by the school nursing team to work with individual families. At a school level, each school will get a feedback letter every year after the measurement programme, which will tell them what proportion of their children in reception are underweight, healthy weight, overweight or very overweight. And I think that's also broken down into boys and girls as well. So yes, we have that. It's not publicly available at a school level. It generally, the schools receive that data, but it's not published at that level. What we do have is, what is publicly available is the data by lower super output area, so we can see different areas and kind of what the proportions within those areas are. But you're right, as I said, there is a very clear social gradient, and you will find that there was one school going back in 2019, one school in Urmston, I think, where in year 6 every child was a healthy weight. It was the only school, but you will tend to see that, like I say, in schools in more affluent areas will have a lower percentage overweight, and schools in the more deprived areas will have higher percentage.
Yeah. But we do know in Trafford precisely where we've got to concentrate all our efforts.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor New, did you have a question?
Hiya. Yeah, it's probably really straightforward and simple, but part of the one-to-one work that's undertaken with families is budgeting and menu planning, cooking. Are those kind of things covered? There was a family that I knew quite recently. They were doing a food skills course, and the mum said, "Oh, well, it's all very well saying that, but I don't cook." It was so simple. It was everything was bought in, or it was all takeaway, and it was such a breath of fresh air for her, for somebody to actually sit down and show her how to make a healthy meal. And then she found at the end of the week she had money left, and it was a revelation for her because she'd never been parented in that way. She was just doing the best thing she could for her family, and it really was an eye-opener for her. So things like that make such a difference, don't they?
Yeah, and that's one of the things, the family programme that Foundation 92 have been delivering, that's one of the things that they've been working with, particularly looking at cooking on a budget, cooking skills, and they've been linking in with the bread and butter thing and the good food bag and sale to support families to be able to actually get hold of food at a price that they can afford, and support them with the skills to then know what to do with it. Because you see in the media, people will come out and say, well, healthy food's perfectly cheap. You can buy 4 carrots and 3 potatoes and you can make a soup and it's all fine. But when some of the issues that families talk to us about is that that's fine, but what if the children don't like it? they're not used to eating that food. Then they've wasted their food budget and they still need to eat. So it's such a complex system that, and like you say, when people haven't got necessarily the skills, the time, the risk to be able to make something different, it's a hugely complex situation, and it's hard to try and cover all of those avenues.
It is, and I think judgment as well sometimes plays a big part in things.
Yeah.
People are actually mortified when they find out that people think that their child's obese, and it's down to them. The denial I see, but at the end of the day, as you say, if you've got the right people delivering that training and the judgment is taken away, that's half the battle.
Yeah, and addressing stigma is one of the kind of key actions within the healthy weight strategy, both with children and adults. And there's been a lot of conversations kind of across the Northwest with colleagues in other authorities about how to avoid stigmatizing language and actions. And, it's essentially our environment that we live in makes it harder to be a healthy weight.
Yeah.
So, we shouldn't be stigmatizing people. It's not necessarily that they've made poor choices or that it's bad parenting. It's really hard.
Yeah. And it's not too late as well. That's the good thing, isn't it?
No, I think Councillor News actually made the point that I was going to make myself, that a lot of, I was brought up on a homemade dinner every night. My children, when they were younger, none of them were obese because they were active, and they had a home cooked dinner every night. But I think as they get older, you're working longer hours. There's a lot more processed food available, and I think it's just educating the generation of mums as well that have probably been brought up on processed food, to learn how to cook stuff from basic. I remember a little girl coming to our house for tea some years ago now, and I was peeling potatoes and she didn't know what they were because chips came in a bag.
Yeah.
It was, she'd never seen a raw potato. And I think this is sadly where the closure of the children's centres has had an impact as well, because that looked after the parent as well as the child. But I think it's a marvellous thing if we can liaise and actually get people cooking from scratch, and you can feed a family with fresh ingredients.
Yeah, it's changing the food culture, isn't it? So we've kind of gone down one route, and it's trying to bring it back to where we were, a few decades ago, where, like say, people did cook from scratch because essentially people have more time.
It isn't just cooking from scratch, because I've got 6 grandchildren, and if you're cooking for them, you're thinking, what shall I make? You'll do this, well, so-and-so won't eat this, and so-and-so won't eat that, and trying to cook a meal that you really end up with cooking something that the children are going to eat. And if you're taking, fortunately, my grandchildren are not overweight at the moment, but they're still young enough to be controllable. But when they get a bit older, I know what it'll be like when they're saying, I don't want this and I won't have that, and I'm going to go and buy this. It's not easy for parents at all now. This is the worry I have.
I think as well as they get, I don't know what school lunches are like these days, but it was meat, potatoes and veg when I had school dinners. I didn't always eat it, but I think it is more fast food type of thing, and particularly when they get beyond and they go on to secondary school, where they can basically choose to have 3 pastry items, or that there's no control over that, and that's very difficult to deal with, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The school food standards were meant to address that. Diplomatically, I'm not sure they always do. At primary school, I think it's less of a problem, but you're right. I think part of the thing is that schools want the kids to eat the school food, so they want to make it something that they're going to like. And if you've got children who've been brought up eating certain foods, they're more likely to eat those. So it starts kind of before school. We know that kind of first food weaning, early experience of food is really important, because otherwise, by the time they get to school, you're fighting a losing battle. I mean, my personal bugbear is that the school food standards gives a pudding for every meal, which I don't know about anyone else. I don't have a pudding with my lunch every day.
Sorry, am I okay? I never had dessert. I think we had one yogurt each a week. We could choose a yogurt each, and it was how it was then in those days in where I lived. But my husband had a dessert after every meal, and he has to have something sweet now. And he's not colossal, but he has a weight problem. So, and it stayed with him all the way,
Yeah.
But we definitely, Sure Start Children's Centres, that was the biggest loss. We still have the odd one, but the biggest loss ever. And Jack Monroe,
Yep.
she's a bit of a hero, isn't she? She can help people, I think, and if we can get her sort of information stretched across and shared everywhere, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
I think about using some of the kind of celebrities, for want of a better word, the work that Marcus Rashford and Tom Kerridge do with their full-time meals. I think that's part of that, for me, needs to form part of these services, because actually they're people that people can relate to and can engage with. So yeah.
Sorry, hence you're saying about Salford community. When they're involved, it really helps, doesn't it? The big football clubs and rugby clubs.
It does.
Alex, did you want to come in there? And I know Councillor Hines has got a question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just going to ask quickly, talk about work with schools. Have you done any work around with schools around the design of their lunch cafeterias and stuff, so that they're doing stuff like putting the healthy options first, so children are more likely to pick them up, and chopping up pieces of apple and stuff like that?
The work with schools is top of the list now. Now that we're kind of just about back to normal, I mean, touching wood, I'm really keen to work with schools. It's probably the easiest way to kind of get that engagement is through our Trafford Services meal service, where we can start to work with them and work with the cooks and the chefs that work in the schools. But yes, school food is one of the top priorities.
Councillor Hines, did you want to add something?
Yeah, only briefly. It was only to say that I think where we can influence, and I know there are some really strict guidelines about what you can and can't influence through the planning process, but through our local plan, where we can, as a local authority, influence the types of availability of food outlets. I think that is so critical in terms of, because you talked before, Councillor Young, about different parts of the borough, and we know in some parts of the borough having that access to affordable healthy food is quite limited, actually. And if you haven't got, Councillor New talked before about not having access to decent public transport, and if you can't travel to go and buy food, and it isn't local, it's not within walking distance, some of these local supermarkets they sell food at a premium price. It's not at their bigger outlet prices and things like that. And that has a massive impact, so that people are more reliant on processed food. And likewise with your takeaway outlets being near schools and all those sorts of things. And I know the planning laws are quite prohibitive in some ways, but where we can influence it as a local authority, I think we should be. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for bringing us the report this
No
evening.
problem.
Very interesting, and keep up the good work. Thank you. The report on school funding, cognizant of the time we had decided to defer until the next meeting. I'm not aware of any urgent business, so I'd like to thank everybody for coming with your presentations tonight. Special thanks to the Scrutiny Committee members. Councillor Longden had to send his apologies, but he'd asked me to pass on his best wishes. I would like to say a special thanks to Councillor Dillon, who is stepping down in May, and I'm going to miss her so much. She loves it so much. But thank you. Yeah. No. No. Thank you so much. Your contributions have been absolutely. The lived experience is the greatest way of learning and presenting problems to us, and you've been absolutely excellent, Jen, and I will miss you. Yeah. And can I also thank Alex for his, I know he's been thrown at the deep end, and I know he's managing all the committees at the moment, but thank you so much. And I'd like to welcome Stephanie on board, and you had a bit of a taster of what you're going to have to put up with. And with that, I'll close the meeting. I think we'll miss the football going home, thankfully. And wish you all a safe journey home.